There is a subtle humiliation that most men perform without realizing it. It happens the moment they meet a woman they desire and begin structuring the conversation like a job application. They lean forward slightly, soften their tone, and begin extracting information as if connection is something that can be earned through curiosity. On the surface, it appears confident, even socially intelligent, but beneath it lies something far more revealing: the quiet surrender of the frame. When you interview a woman, you position her as evaluator and yourself as candidate. Every question, no matter how casual, establishes a hierarchy. What do you do? What kind of men do you like? What are you looking for? Each one subtly communicates that her answers determine your value. This is not seduction, it is submission disguised as engagement. The intelligent man understands something Machiavelli observed about rulers and subjects centuries ago. Power does not belong to the one who speaks the most or gathers the most information. Power belongs to the one who defines the tone of the interaction. In The Prince, Machiavelli repeatedly emphasizes that perception governs allegiance. Whoever shapes perception shapes loyalty, fear, and admiration. The same applies in attraction. The one who controls the emotional atmosphere controls the dynamic. When a man begins interviewing, he forfeits authorship. He becomes reactive. He waits for her responses so he can adjust himself accordingly. If she says she likes ambitious men, he subtly amplifies his achievements. If she says she dislikes arrogance, he softens his confidence. Without realizing it, he morphs in real time. Adaptation may look strategic, but when it is driven by approval seeking, it erodes presence. The deeper issue is psychological. Questions signal interest, but too many signal need. And need is the fastest way to lose gravity. A woman can sense when she is being evaluated and when she is being pursued for validation. The latter creates pressure, not romantic tension, but social obligation. She feels responsible for sustaining the conversation because you have handed her the steering wheel. Machiavelli warned that a prince who depends too heavily on the goodwill of others becomes fragile. The moment circumstances change, so does loyalty. Translate that into modern interaction, and the principle remains intact. If your confidence relies on her responses, you have already made her indispensable. The intelligent man never builds his composure on unstable ground. This does not mean silence without depth or arrogance without warmth. It means you enter an interaction already centered. You are not there to gather credentials. You are there to express perspective. When you shift from questioning to observing, something subtle changes. Instead of asking what she does for fun, you remark that she carries herself like someone who gets bored easily. Instead of inquiring about her preferences, you comment on what you notice in her tone. Suddenly the dynamic tilts. Observation positions you as interpreter rather than applicant. It signals that you are not trying to discover how to impress her. You are revealing how you perceive the world. That shift is powerful because attraction is rarely born from comfort. It grows from intrigue. When she feels seen rather than evaluated, curiosity awakens. She begins responding not to fill your questionnaire, but to challenge your interpretation. Most men fear this shift because it requires emotional steadiness. When you stop interviewing, there will be moments of silence. There will be pauses where nothing is exchanged. The insecure man rushes to repair those spaces. He fears that silence equals failure. The grounded man allows those moments to breathe. He understands that silence is not absence, but tension forming. In The Prince, Machiavelli notes that rulers who reveal too much of their internal deliberations weaken their authority. Words, when excessive, dilute weight. The same phenomenon appears in conversation. When you speak only with intention, every sentence lands heavier. When you flood the air with curiosity driven by anxiety, you train her to tune out. There is also a neurological component to this dynamic. Human attraction thrives on unresolved questions. When someone is predictable, the brain relaxes. Relaxation is safe, but it is rarely electrifying. When someone is slightly unreadable yet composed, the brain remains engaged. It scans, analyzes, anticipates. That anticipation becomes emotional energy. The intelligent man leverages this without manipulation. He does not withhold to create confusion, he simply refuses to overexpose. He does not interrogate because he does not need answers to feel secure. His identity is established before the conversation begins. That independence radiates subtly, and subtle signals are often the most potent. After the interview phase collapses, most men fall into a second trap that is even more damaging because it disguises itself as honesty. They begin explaining themselves, not because they were asked to, but because they feel an internal pressure to be clear, acceptable, and emotionally legible. They believe that if a woman fully understands them, attraction will deepen. In reality, the opposite occurs. The more a man insists on being understood, the more he erodes the authority of his presence. The urge to explain is rooted in insecurity, even when it sounds rational. When a man clarifies his intentions prematurely, defends his opinions unnecessarily, or softens his edges to avoid discomfort, he is signaling something far louder than his words. He is signaling that his internal stability depends on external agreement. That dependence is felt immediately, not logically, but emotionally. A woman may nod along, but her nervous system registers the imbalance. Machiavelli understood that power collapses when justification replaces decision. In The Prince, he repeatedly implies that rulers who feel compelled to defend their every move invite scrutiny and resistance. Authority is not maintained through constant explanation, but through consistency of action and restraint of speech. When a leader explains too much, he trains others to believe his choices are negotiable. When a man explains too much, he trains a woman to test him. This is where most men misunderstand confidence. They think confidence means being transparent, open, and endlessly communicative. But confidence, in psychological terms, is coherence. It is the alignment between what you say, what you do, and how little you feel compelled to justify either. A man who is at ease with being misunderstood possesses a quiet strength. He does not correct every misinterpretation because he is not dependent on perfect perception. Women test not to be cruel, but to locate solidity. When she questions your opinion or challenges your stance, she is not necessarily seeking an explanation, she is observing your reaction. Does your tone collapse? Do you scramble for words? Do you retreat into overqualification? Or do you remain calm, grounded, and unchanged? The response matters far more than the content. Over-explaining is an emotional confession. It says, I need you to agree with me so I can remain comfortable. That is why it dissolves attraction. It transforms interaction into negotiation. Machiavelli warned against this impulse when he wrote that it is better to be feared than loved if one cannot be both. Fear, in this context, does not mean intimidation. It means gravity. It means being taken seriously without pleading. The man who explains himself too much also destroys mystery. Mystery is not secrecy. It is restraint. It is the discipline to reveal information only when it adds weight. When you expose your internal reasoning at every step, you give away the blueprint to your psychology. Once someone can predict you, they stop feeling pulled toward you. Predictability breeds comfort, not desire. There is also a subtle shift in power when a man begins defending himself. The frame moves from mutual exchange to implicit trial. She becomes the judge, even if she never asked to be. He positions himself as the accused, offering verbal evidence of his worth. This dynamic poisons attraction because desire does not grow in courtrooms. It grows in tension, ambiguity, and emotional contrast. Machiavelli believed that people respect what they cannot easily penetrate. This is not because humans admire cruelty, but because uncertainty demands attention. When a man does not rush to explain, he creates space. In that space, the woman must engage more actively. She must interpret, feel, and wonder. Wonder is the soil where attraction takes root. The most composed men you have encountered likely share a common trait. They do not correct every assumption made about them. They allow others to be wrong. They allow silence after a challenge. They do not rush to smooth over friction. That restraint is not apathy. It is confidence expressed through stillness. This does not mean being dismissive or emotionally unavailable. It means understanding that not every thought deserves articulation and not every emotion deserves exposure. The intelligent man chooses when to speak, not because he is hiding, but because he is deliberate. Deliberateness is felt as strength. When you stop explaining, you reclaim authorship. You are no longer reacting to her perceptions, you are allowing them to form without interference. That autonomy is unsettling in a world where most men are desperate to be decoded. It forces her to meet you where you stand rather than dragging you into clarification loops. Machiavelli wrote that a wise ruler must appear open while remaining internally sovereign. Applied here, it means you can be warm without being transparent, expressive without being defenseless. You share selectively. You stand by your statements. You let actions speak louder than rationalizations. The paradox is that once you stop trying to be understood, understanding often follows naturally. But by then, the dynamic has already shifted. You are no longer seeking approval. You are offering presence. And presence, when unshaken, carries more persuasive power than any explanation ever could. Most men believe the goal is attention. They measure success by how quickly a woman replies, how long she stays engaged, how often she laughs, how intensely she reacts. What they fail to see is that attention is abundant and easily given. Emotional rhythm, on the other hand, is rare, and whoever controls it controls the interaction. The man who chases attention becomes reactive. The man who governs emotional rhythm becomes anchoring. Attention can be won through performance. Jokes, compliments, stories, availability, and constant engagement will almost always produce some response. But performance creates a subtle dependency. Once you establish yourself as the entertainer, you are forced to maintain the tempo. The moment your energy dips, the connection weakens. This is why many men feel exhausted after conversations that should feel natural. They are working to hold interest rather than allowing interest to form. Emotional rhythm is different. It is not about how much you say, but about when you say it. It is the pacing of presence, the ability to slow the interaction without killing it, to pause without apologizing, to respond without urgency. This rhythm communicates something deeper than charisma. It communicates self-governance. A man who controls his internal tempo is not easily pulled into emotional extremes, and that steadiness is felt immediately. Machiavelli understood this principle in political terms. He observed that crowds follow leaders who regulate collective emotion, not those who mirror it. A ruler who panics when the crowd panics loses authority instantly. A ruler who remains composed becomes a reference point. In attraction, the same dynamic unfolds on a smaller scale. When a woman becomes animated, distant, curious, or testing, the man who mirrors her loses position. The man who remains centered sets the tone. Most men confuse responsiveness with leadership. They think replying quickly, matching excitement, and filling emotional gaps demonstrates strength. In reality, it demonstrates dependence. Leadership in interaction means you do not allow another person's emotional fluctuations to dictate your internal state. You acknowledge without absorbing. You engage without chasing. That distinction is subtle, but it changes the entire dynamic. When a man becomes overly focused on keeping a woman's attention, he begins adjusting his behavior in real time. He amplifies what seems to work and suppresses what does not. This constant calibration creates anxiety, even if he is not consciously aware of it. Anxiety leaks through posture, tone, and timing. The woman may not identify it logically, but she feels the instability. Attraction weakens not because he lacks value, but because he lacks center. Controlling emotional rhythm does not mean being cold or distant. It means being internally consistent. When she is playful, you do not escalate to impress. When she is withdrawn, you do not pursue to repair. When she tests, you do not defend to stabilize. You remain measured. That measure becomes the emotional baseline of the interaction, and slowly she begins adjusting to you. This is where many men misinterpret the idea of mystery. Mystery is not silence as a tactic, it is silence as a byproduct of self-containment. A man who has depth does not rush to display it. A man who has options does not cling to outcomes. When you are not emotionally invested in controlling how the interaction unfolds, your behavior becomes relaxed, and relaxation reads as confidence. There is also an important neurological element at play. Emotional unpredictability combined with composure creates contrast. The brain is drawn to contrast. If everything is flat, attention fades. If everything is chaotic, trust dissolves. But when one person remains calm while the emotional environment fluctuates, that person becomes the stabilizing force. Stabilizing forces attract attachment. This is why attempting to control attention backfires. Attention-seeking behavior is loud. It announces itself. Emotional leadership is quiet. It is felt rather than noticed. When a woman senses that your mood is not dependent on her validation, she relaxes into the interaction differently. She becomes more expressive, more curious, more invested, because the pressure to manage your emotions disappears. Machiavelli would describe this as maintaining the frame. The frame is not the topic of conversation. It is the emotional context in which the conversation exists. Whoever controls the frame controls meaning. If you allow her reactions to dictate your responses, you are inside her frame. If you remain steady and deliberate, she gradually steps into yours. Most men lose this position the moment they feel something at stake. They fear losing momentum, losing approval, losing interest. Fear accelerates behavior. It shortens pauses, increases explanations, and sharpens emotional swings. The composed man notices fear but does not obey it. He allows space. He allows silence. He allows tension to exist without resolving it immediately. That tolerance for tension is what separates presence from performance. When you can sit comfortably in unresolved moments, you signal emotional maturity. You show that you do not need instant reassurance. That signal is deeply attractive because it suggests resilience. It suggests that if challenges arise, you will not collapse into reaction. Attention can be taken. Emotional rhythm must be held. When you stop chasing engagement and start regulating your internal state, interactions stop feeling transactional. They slow down, they deepen. And in that depth, attraction begins to form naturally rather than being forced. Even a man who avoids interviewing and resists over-explaining can still sabotage himself in one decisive moment. It happens when he feels momentum building and rushes to secure it. He confesses his intentions too clearly, defines the connection too early, or reveals exactly how invested he has become. What he believes is emotional maturity is often impatience disguised as honesty, and impatience is the enemy of polarity. The moment you remove uncertainty entirely, you remove tension. Human desire feeds on anticipation, not conclusion. When a woman knows exactly how you feel, exactly what you plan, and exactly where you stand before she has emotionally arrived there herself, the dynamic collapses into comfort. Comfort is safe, but it is rarely intoxicating. Predictability reassures the mind while starving the imagination. Machiavelli understood that influence depends on controlled disclosure. He advised rulers to appear transparent while guarding their strategic depth. The principle is not about deception, but timing. Information revealed too early loses impact. In attraction, the same rule applies. When you expose your emotional position before she has invested proportionally, you tilt the balance. You become the one waiting. Smart men never interview women because they understand something larger than conversation technique. They understand that attraction is a dance of tension and grounding. If you interrogate, you surrender the frame. If you over-explain, you surrender authority. If you chase attention, you surrender emotional leadership. And if you reveal everything prematurely, you surrender mystery. None of this requires manipulation. It requires self-possession. A man who knows who he is does not rush to define himself in someone else's eyes. He does not accelerate intimacy to relieve anxiety. He allows interest to unfold at a pace that matches mutual investment. His calm is not a tactic, it is a reflection of internal order. The deeper secret Machiavelli grasped was not about domination, but about perception. People respond to what feels stable, measured, and slightly beyond reach. When you become entirely available emotionally before someone has earned that access, you dissolve tension. When you remain composed, observant, and deliberate, you create space for her curiosity to grow. Attraction is not built through interrogation, clarification, or confession. It is built through gravity. Gravity does not chase. It does not beg to be understood. It does not rush to secure outcomes. It simply holds its center and lets others move in response. So the next time you speak to a woman, do not structure the interaction like an interview. Do not scramble to defend your thoughts. Do not perform for attention. And do not reveal your full emotional landscape at the first sign of connection. Speak with intention, pause without fear, reveal in fragments. Let silence carry weight. Because the man who cannot tolerate uncertainty will always seek reassurance, and the man who seeks reassurance will always give away leverage. But the man who is comfortable in his own mystery becomes the reference point in every room he enters. He does not need to be decoded instantly. He does not need to be agreed with immediately. He does not need to be understood completely. And that is why smart men never interview women. They are not trying to qualify. They are establishing presence.